Hello and welcome to my March video newsletter. I hope you've had an enjoyable February. This month I wanted to talk about using mindfulness to both notice what's there and also what's not there. So mindfulness really helps us to get in tune with the present moment. And you can see my dog in the background there. He's wanting to take part in this today, so I let him hang out. But anyway, so mindfulness is noticing what is arising in the present moment. And we use the 4 foundations of mindfulness to get in touch with the present moment. So there's mindfulness of the body, and that includes mindfulness of the breath. So we use the breath to make contact with our bodies. There's mindfulness of feeling tone. So is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Is it neutral? There's mindfulness of thoughts and mental activity. And then there's mindfulness of phenomena, which is basically the nature of things, the impermanent nature of our lives, things that are arising within us, things that are arising around us. And it can be overwhelming sometimes when we become mindful of the struggles of our lives. When we're bombarded with the negative news surrounding us. On a personal level, in the news there was John Geddert, who was a former gymnastics coach, and I traveled to Malaysia with him and his gymnast back in 1997, I guess it was. And he was found by suicide and had recently had several charges against him, basically for abuse, for treating his athletes very poorly, and I think some sexual abuse accusations. And that's just one of thousands of stories that we're bombarded with every day that are very negative, and they can bring us down. And we can become present to how those stories, how the news and the media, we can become present within our own bodies to how that affects us. Oftentimes it brings up emotions, maybe of fear, anger, disgust. We feel our bodies contracting, our breath getting more shallow. And these are all things, I'm not saying we tune out the media by any means, but we are exposed to so much negativity. And Rick Hanson, who is a neuroscientist, he's a psychologist, and he studies how mindfulness and meditation change our brains. And he talks about negative experiences being like Velcro for our minds and positive experiences being like Teflon. So we've evolved to have a brain that clings to the negative, because if we overlooked a potential threat evolutionarily, we could have been killed. And so our brains have really evolved to scan for danger, to connect, or I guess attach to the negative. And when positive things happen, they kind of come and go. So they bounce off of us. That's what he's talking about, Teflon. Teflon just kind of bounces off of us, and we don't really take in the positive. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how we can use mindfulness practice to begin to shift the balance to taking in a little bit more of the positive and noticing when negative is not there. I recently was part of a group meditation led by a mindfulness teacher, and she started by having us look around the room and noticing all the things around us that were not dangerous, not stressful. And it's important to tune into that, to remind our minds, to remind our bodies that there are more moments and more things in our world that are actually safe and that are pleasant, that are kind, loving. But because we're bombarded with social media and regular media that really feeds into our negativity bias, that feeds into that part of our brain that clings to the negative, it's hard for us. We overlook the positive, and then that has an effect on our physiology. Our nervous systems become heightened to threat. And so we kind of go into that fight, flight, or freeze response, as opposed to having more balance in our nervous system, having more ease, which then that affects our immune systems positively, our health in general. When our nervous system is more balanced, our health is more balanced. So how do we tune into both the positive and the absence of negative? It's really intentional. It's coming back to our intention, and that's what mindfulness practice is. It's an intentional attention that's in this moment, and it's free of judgment. So we're opening to the entirety of our experience. It's not pushing away the negative by any means, but it's opening up our view to remember that there's so much good as well. And so what we can do is, with that intentional attention, is check in with ourselves throughout the day. Look around and tune into what is actually not dangerous right now. What is actually not stressful right now? For me, in this moment, if I look out my window, I see beautiful trees, and there's no threat there. I see a blue sky. It's beautiful, no threat. My dog sitting behind me. There's no danger there. So I invite you throughout your day to tune into that, to tune into the absence of negativity, to the absence of danger. And then from there, really opening to that pleasantness, that safety that comes when there is an absence of those negative things. So tuning into goodness. And I want to use another practice that Rick Hanson encourages. Once you tune into a positive experience, something that's pleasant, something that has an absence of negativity, then he uses this acronym called H.E.A.L, H-E-A-L. And each letter of the acronym stands for a different step in the process. So the H of H.E.A.L is to have a positive experience. And we can have more positive experiences through mindfulness, through this intentional attention to pay attention to things that are pleasant. So we have this positive experience. The E of H.E.A.L is to enrich it. So allow yourself to really feel deeply this pleasantness, this positive experience. Sometimes I think of it too as expanding. So having something really pleasant and then letting it expand beyond your body to other people, to nature, to the universe. So you imagine this pleasantness just really getting big. And then the A of H.E.A.L is to absorb. You take it into every cell of your body, to the depths of your DNA, imagining pleasantness, imagining safety, and really let it sink in. And then the L of H.E.A.L is an interesting step, and it can be a little tricky and confusing at first. The L is to link it to a past experience that wasn't very pleasant. And you don't want to bring up traumatizing experiences. Really, on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe something on the level of 3 or 4 in terms of unpleasantness. Or maybe you're having a very happy experience and you're remembering a time in your life when you couldn't access happiness. Or maybe there was a mild depression. So, kind of in the back of your mind, remembering this time of your life that wasn't very pleasant or where you were struggling. But the forefront or the center stage experience is this pleasantness. And what you're doing is kind of pendulating a little bit between a not so pleasant experience of the past and this pleasantness of the present moment. And it rewires our nervous system. It reminds our brains that, oh, this is actually possible. This pleasantness is possible. And what can happen is the pleasant experience can start to kind of embrace and hold the negativity from the past. And this is building upon that concept of neuroplasticity, that our nervous system, our brain, and its wiring throughout our body is malleable, it's changeable, adaptable, based on where we place our attention. There's a story of, I think it's a Cherokee story or a Native American story, where there's a grandfather talking to his grandson about the two wolves of the mind. There's one wolf that is filled with greed and fear and delusion. And there's another wolf of the mind that's loving and kind and gentle. And there's oftentimes a battle between these two wolves of the mind, and the grandson asks the grandfather, well, which wolf wins? And the grandfather says, the one that I feed. And so it goes back to feeding those positive experiences. We're not pushing away the negative. We're not becoming numb to the world or being ignorant by any means. We can honor that challenge, the struggle, the pain of the world. That's important too. But the story doesn't end there. And it's easy to close our minds off to all of the goodness. And so that's what I'm saying with this practice, is remembering when there is an absence of negativity, when there's an absence of fear, an absence of stress, an absence of danger, and giving that your attention, letting that sink into every cell of your being, letting pleasantness be big in your present moment experience. And it opens us up. It allows us to experience the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows of life with more balance, more equanimity. We're not clinging, we're not grasping, we're not pushing away so much. We're really opening to the entirety of our experience. And maybe even reprogramming our brains a little bit to be a little bit more like Velcro for the positive, not in the sense that we're clinging to it, but that we let ourselves take it in. We let ourselves take in the good. And bit by bit, that starts to shift our brain. It starts to shift what we're paying attention to. And life doesn't feel so grim. It doesn't feel so negative. It doesn't feel so heavy. So I encourage you to try these practices. The H.E.A.L practice is something that's been incredibly powerful in my own life, dealing with ongoing health challenges for the past about decade. I came upon the H.E.A.L practice a couple of years ago, and there have been many days where I didn't want to live because my body felt so awful and I couldn't access anything that felt good. And my practice started to become using mindfulness to become aware of any moment of pleasantness, even if it was just maybe a fleeting moment where I felt ease in my body, or I was overcome with joy, or maybe I noticed that my legs actually felt okay that day. My breathing felt okay that day. And so I would really start to use that practice, the H.E.A.L practice, to tune into those pleasant moment experiences. And I've noticed with time that it's much easier to take in the good. It's much easier to notice when my body feels okay. And those moments start to grow. And in my own experience, I've really noticed that there's a lot more pleasantness now, that I've been giving pleasantness my attention. So if you want more information, rickhanson.org, rickhanson.org. He is a wealth of information. He has wonderful books. He has a new book called Neurodharma, another book called Just One Thing, which is a beautiful little book, one day at a time. You just, read an excerpt each day of something to focus on, to bring more positivity to your life. He has a book called Buddha's Brain and Hardwiring Happiness. So I encourage you to look into his work. And I guess I can give an update on what I'm doing with Fit Into It. I'm offering some mindfulness classes through Kestrel Wellness, which is a functional medicine clinic in Utah, and I do virtual online mindfulness classes for them. And I still have my online courses if you're interested in mindfulness in sport, or Who Am I Now? The Transition to Life After Sport. I'm offering one-on-one mindfulness coaching. So sometimes it's very helpful to go through these practices in the presence of somebody else. It's not like somebody else is ever going to solve your problems, but being in the presence of someone sometimes helps us get in touch with our own power that we weren't able to see alone. So if you're ever interested in doing a one-on-one session, feel free to reach out to me. I hope you have a wonderful month that's filled with health and safety and many pleasant moments.